Hey y'all, it's Kasim with Solutions 8, and in this video I want to show you what a good PPC agreement looks like. For my agency owners out there, feel free to rip me off wholesale if you want to. Have the document. I'd love to know that I've saved some people some heartache and some headache, and saved you from some of the learning lessons I've gone through. But really this video is for clients. If you're working with an agency right now, or you're considering working with an agency, I want to show you the type of agreement that I think you should be signing. And I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm not telling you that my agreement's the best in the world because I'm the smartest in the world. I'm actually telling you that my agreement is the best in the world because maybe I'm the dumbest in the world and I've made the most mistakes. I've been around, the digital marketing space for 15 years and I've learned a lot of lessons. And so really what this is it's just a nice documentation of all my failures. So one real quick just shout out to my attorneys. Scott Weiss over at Weiss Brown and his entire team are phenomenal. They put this together for me. So if you like what you're about to see and you want somebody to chop one up for you, then I'd go to Weiss Brown. I'm not an affiliate. I just like promoting people that I like. Know, like, and trust. So here's our agreement. Like I said, feel free to, I'd prefer you not like copy and paste, but if you're gathering kind of the same bullet points, that's perfectly fine. And if you copy and paste, I'm not going to sue you because I'm just not a litigious person. But I hope you stub your toe that day. Here we are. So the very first thing that I'll point out is you have to have a scope of work. One of the biggest mistakes that I see made from agencies, and we did this in the past, is they're just kind of broad sweeping, like, oh yeah, we'll manage your pay-per-click for you. And it's like, well, what does that mean? What networks, for instance? Is this across every channel, or is this limited in scope? And within PPC, what does that mean too? Like, if I want to run YouTube ads, are you going to create my YouTube ads for me? And so you'll notice that we've got, I think, relatively clear lists of services in our Exhibit A. And what's nice is we also define things like what are the included channels. So you know from a scope perspective what it is that you're getting. And this also shows you what you're not getting, because we're a data-driven agency. We're not a creative agency. So if you wanted custom media or funnel development or any of those things, we're not your people. And I think that's outlined pretty clearly. So make sure if you're signing an agreement that the scope is clear enough that the agency is showing you what they're doing and also what they're not doing, because nothing's more frustrating than signing up with an agency and thinking like, oh yeah, good, they're going to be building my landing pages, and then you get to the other end of it and you hear me go, well, we don't build landing pages. I'll consult on your landing page. Happy to do that. So just make sure there's a scope of work. It doesn't need to be like checklist comprehensive. Honestly, it can't be. If I'm managing your Google Ads, there's so many things that we need to do that it would be impossible to include in the agreement. And then Google changes so often that the agreement would never be up to date. So, what you want to do is make sure that you trust the people that you're working with. But you'll see in my Exhibit A and the list of services, we kind of have buckets. It's like campaign creation, huge bucket. But within that, it's nice to know that you actually get the creation of the campaign, and then it gives me a little bit of latitude too to know, like, okay, sir, there's some extra ancillary purposes, things that we need to do that I don't necessarily have to spell out in black and white. The recommended tools, just so you know, there's a ton of things that agencies may recommend you use that aren't included in the scope. And you want to make sure they're being clear about that up front too. Like if you're an e-commerce client and your shopping cart isn't converting for whatever reason, I'm going to say, hey, you should throw live chat on your checkout pages, because people will start to tell you why they're not buying, which is a pro tip, by the way. But I'm not going to man your live chat for you or provide you with chat services. So, in a lot of ways, we end up being your quarterback. We're your trusted advisor. And I've got a little note here saying, if I recommend a service, then it's not necessarily included. And you're also not obligated to use it. Content and media requirements, I think this is a good disclaimer from us. Just, hey, you've got to provide us all the stuff that we need, and also make sure that you actually own it. We use a tool called Call Tracking Metrics, and we make that disclaimer up front. You want to see agencies letting you know some of the things that they're going to be using that are, in addition to. Our clients actually incur a cost from Call Tracking Metrics. They pay for the usage, so it's like 3 cents a minute or something, but it's important to know that. Here's one of my favorites, and I'm going to go big for this one. So you'll notice that our terms are month to month. We have month to month terms. This is, I know it's going to be a sticking point for a lot of agencies, so forgive me. If you're a full funnel agency, like you're doing the whole thing, the entire marketing plan, surrogate CMO, building out the annual content schedules and SEO, PPC, social media, et cetera, I think you're in a very defensible position to ask for an annual contract or longer. And the way I kind of look at that is like, do you need to hire for this client? And if that's the case, or if the client left, would you need to fire? So, it's a personnel standpoint. We're really in the labor industry, all of us. And it's okay to ask for an annual contract, I think, if you're making hiring and firing decisions based off of, one or two clients. For service-specific agencies, and we're more heavily commoditized, but we're also a lot cheaper, right? So if you're hiring a full funnel agency, that's $10,000 a month, at a minimum, sometimes more. For us, we're operating off of a specific service and paradigm, and there's the ongoing reality that it stops working, which sucks, but it happens. I had 3 rehabilitation clinics all shut down at the same time because Google woke up one day and said, we're not running rehab clinics anymore. We're just not letting you buy traffic. What am I going to do there if I had you on an annual contract? Do I keep charging you? Because like, aha, I got your signature on the paper, and so now I'm going to take your money. That doesn't make any logical or ethical sense. From a ethical perspective, it's kind of like, come on, what are we doing here? And then from a logical perspective, all I'm going to do is have 3 really pissed off clients. And from a reputation management standpoint, that doesn't behoove me at all. So I think that if you're service specific, you're in a commoditized space, especially if you're in a space that has ebbs and flows. Using a less extreme example, let's say that it's not that Google shuts you down. What if your competition just heats up beyond your ability to control it? So you're a DUI attorney, for example, and you start seeing so much competition come into the space, and the CPCs are going so high, and they're better salespeople than you are, and they have better ascension models than you do, and they have bigger teams than you do, and at a certain point you're just like, y'all, I can't do this anymore. Do I hold you to your annual contract? So I believe in month-to-month contracts. I just feel like if it's working, you're going to continue to pay me. And if it stops working, why would I want you as a client? Why would I want to keep you there? So I hope I didn't offend anybody that's like all hot and bothered about the annual thing. It's just my pretty strong opinion. You'll do notice, though, that we ask for 30 days notice of cancellation in writing. And that might mean that you end up, paying for a little bit more than you want to pay for, depending on when your billing cycle is. The issue there, though, is I make commitments on my end. Like software commitments specifically. We're charged according to billing. I've got my own employees. Sometimes we'll rope in like a vendor, a strategic partner, if there's something, like customer specific. So, giving me a little bit of heads up, I think, is a common courtesy, and a very light concession given that I don't ask for annual terms. We don't even ask for 90 days up front any longer. We used to. Now we still manage from a sales perspective. We ask people to commit to 90 days. So call it a gentle person's agreement. It's on a handshake, though. If you want to jump ship, you can jump ship, but we let them know it usually takes 90 days to make these campaigns work. But because we don't ask for that, I think the mild concession of saying, hey, you got to give me 30 days notice is it's a friendly kind of line in the sand. Some of the stuff is boilerplate, termination of non-payment, refusal of advertising networks makes all the sense in the world. Make sure that your fees are outlined clearly. Clearly outline your fees, and you're like, well, yeah, of course I would do that as an agency. And to clients, some of this stuff gets super nebulous. So we charge flat fee plus percentage, and you can see the way that my pricing is broken down here in Exhibit B. Here's your first month's management fee, and then here's your base management fee plus the percentage of ad spend, and this varies based off of the number of channels that we're running and the size of your campaigns, and then the included channels. You'll see some agencies, if they want to bill like hourly or per account or per campaign or whatever, if those things aren't clearly outlined in the fee structure, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where, as you want to scale, you've got this great agency and you love them and you're like, great, throw gas on the fire, and then all of a sudden you start getting hit with these fees that you don't necessarily understand or didn't see or were a little nebulous. Then that's it's just one of the worst things that can happen. The other thing that really pisses me off, and I'm going to jump on a soapbox, and I'm also not going to apologize for this one. So agencies that want annual contracts, totally understood. We're just on two different sides of the fence, but you're still in the room with the good guys. For the people that veil spend, I don't like you. I think you're unethical. So if you're like, hey, Mr. Client, why don't you give me $10,000, and some of it will go to Google and Facebook and whatever, and some of it I'll keep. But you don't need to know how much is that. How much is split. That pisses me off. And that's, in terms of the fee structure thing, make sure that you know how much you're actually spending on advertising, how much you're actually giving to an agency. There's a great big agency in the market. I'm not going to say their name because I'm not going to try to start a fight. But this is their entire model. And what's worse is they go after small businesses, so little mom and pop shops. And so, they'll take $1,000 from mom and pop kettle for their little restaurant. And, you open it up and you realize, oh wow, $400 of that actually went to advertising and the rest of it went straight to the agency's pocket. And they might say, well, like, what do you expect us to do with only $1,000? And in my mind, I'm like, well, why don't you make that clear to your client? If you can't manage a campaign for less than like a $600 flat fee or whatever, let them know, hey, this is the amount of money that's going to ad spend. So make sure that your spend is clearly articulated. We don't even accept spend from clients. We make sure that your card is hooked up to the network and you pay them directly. And that's very important too. You also want to make sure that agencies aren't using proprietary dashboards, because that same agency that I'm talking about, you don't even get access to the account. They just send you to their weird jiggy, login. It's their url.com/login or whatever, and then you get to see kind of some performance metrics, but you don't really know what's going on. So make sure that the management fee is paid out very clearly. You'll also notice that we mentioned our percentage spend here. Intellectual property. This, I think, is critically important. You own everything that we create as long as the rightful owner can be assigned. So there's a lot of open source stuff that we use, obviously, and then like we can't own Google Ads, but everything that we develop is the ownership of the client, with the exception of like our internal IP. So like if we have, processes and procedures that we use to manage your campaign, those are ours. But if we create something specifically for you, then that's yours, and it should be, right? Like, it's work for hire. So agencies that try to withhold accounts too, that pisses me off. I see this all the time. We get a lead that comes in, and it's always the nicest person in the world too. They're always like, yeah, we've been with these people for 3 years, and it was going great in the very beginning, but then it started to fall flat. Now that we want to leave, they won't give us our accounts. And there's nothing you can do. It used to be a violation of Google's terms of service, but they changed it. And I don't know why they changed. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. There were some elements where we would own the account, like if we're working on like a performance basis. But yeah, so if you don't own your accounts, then you're kind of in rough shape. And so our agreements, unless there's, like I said, a participation or some level of like equity ownership or whatever, the IP always goes to the client. We've got some of our terms. A couple of these things are really important. You'll notice that we're like, hey, don't make changes to our account because we're held accountable to them. You want to see this. You want to see agencies kind of protecting their domain. If an agency's not doing that, then they just haven't been around long enough. Because if you're going to hold me accountable to the performance of your campaign, but you also got your nephew in there, tweaking bids or whatever, like, that's not going to fly. That's not going to work for anybody. So make sure that they've got a little bit of red tape written around it, because it kind of shows that they've got a backbone. You want that. You don't want a yes person, unless you do. In which case, go get like the youngest person on Fiverr that you can find. I'm not disparaging those folks, by the way. They're probably all smarter than me, and I'm not being hyperbolic. But they don't have any experience, and they're not going to push back on you, and they're going to let you tank your own campaign. If you come to me and you're like, change all the bids to maximize conversions or whatever, I'm just going to be like, no, we're not doing that. And then I'll explain to you why. And if you don't like that, then, we can make a friendly departure. Or maybe you're smarter than I am and you have a reason for it that actually makes sense. And I'm like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for teaching me. But when we have clients that come out of the woodwork that are just like, I need to be position number one every time, we're like, no, you don't. And I can show you why. Some of these notes I'm going to breeze over. Advertising networks, are finicky, and there's just only so many things that we can do. Certain turnaround time requirements, and this honestly is to protect us, because every now and then we get a client that's like, I text messaged you 7 minutes ago and I haven't heard back, and we just need to sort of be careful with the crazies. Those relationships tend not to last long anyway. Limitation and scope, so it's one website, one account type of thing. Sometimes we'll do like multi-channel conversion tracking, but if you're advertising multiple websites, it's multiple agreements. We don't have any controls over the policies. Everything that we're doing is the work made for hire. So, I kind of referenced that up in the intellectual property piece. You have to give us access to everything, standard indemnification clauses, standard like limited warranty liability stuff. This is all legally gobbledygooky stuff that my attorney put in there. Confidential information, so more or less an NDA, but mutual in a lot of ways. Jurisdiction, make sure that honestly you pay attention to this one, because if the jurisdiction is Malaysia, then good luck to you, because you're going to have to book a flight. Make sure that the contract is assignable or not, depending on your comfort zone. Obviously, we don't want people assigning contracts or agreements without us. And then, scrolling down here, you can kind of see, like, here's a breakdown of our scope of work. This is going to change for every agreement, by the way. So if you're actually looking at working with us and you notice that this doesn't look like yours, it's because you might be looking at a different agreement. Breakdown of the fees and how we bill, credit card authorization form, that's signed securely inside a DocuSign, and then agreements to use call tracking metrics. And that's our agreement. It's as friendly as I think an agreement can get. At one point, I played with just plain language agreements. It was like 5 bullet points, and these are the things that we're going to do for you. And as much as I'd like to believe that we live in a world where you can function that way, there's just too much stuff that happens. I mean, it'd be cool. I'd be impressed by a vendor that did that, but I think you could, your family photographer could do that. But the minute I start managing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in your money, we should probably have some fine print in there that helps both of us. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for everybody. I hope if you're an agency owner and you're trying to figure out your own agreement, you're going to have some disagreements with me, which is perfectly fine. But just know that I've gone through the crucible as far as some of these things are concerned. The last thing that I'll say is, one of my business partners in the past, we used to have an agency with him. We ended up selling out, but he's still a good friend. He always said something akin, and I'm going to butcher it, but he'd say that a good agreement can't protect you from a bad player. Meaning that it doesn't matter how rock solid your language is. Somebody wants to be a jerk or do the wrong thing or whatever. They're going to find a way or a reason. Like we've all seen. Everybody's watched enough of those made-for-TV attorney movies where you can just shred these agreements left, right, and center. Like you find the reason that it's no longer applicable. And I remember reading an article about how the Oxford comma cost somebody $5 million or whatever, something stupid. So just make sure that these are good folks on both sides. If you're an agency, sometimes you get so desperate for work, or you just really want to sign the deal, and you ignore some of those red flags. And I still do that. We did that pretty recently. We had a client come through that was the wrong client. Just, kind of poor attitude, really rude, interrupted my sales gal a lot. Just not a very kind person, wasn't very empathic, didn't really seem like a team player. And, the whole time I was like, gosh, I really don't want to take this guy. And he ended up just being a nightmare. He was an absolute, complete, total nightmare. We refunded his money. We just walked. And I just, I should have saved myself the headache and say, hey, you know what? I don't think I'm the right fit for you. And there was somebody out there that might have been. I think really what he needed was an internal full-time employee. He really wanted somebody that he could dictate terms to, I think was his big problem. So as an agency, make sure that the client is reasonable and seems like good folks. And as a client, again, no amount of little technical writing or whatever is going to protect you if the agency's not, not just because ethics is one thing, but it's also there's something to be said for capability. And I started my agency when I was 20 years old, and I knew nothing. I did not know what I was doing, and I lied through my teeth. And honestly, I didn't even know I was doing it, because somebody would say oh, can you do this? Can you build a custom website in Joomla? And at the time, I didn't know what Joomla was, but I was like, well, I know I can figure anything out. I've built custom software before. There's no way this is hard. So my answer would be yes. And so I didn't think I was lying at the time. I just thought I was being that nimble, creative entrepreneur. But really, I didn't even know what Joomla was. That's a true story, by the way. And it happened with a very good friend of mine, John Klor. If you're out there, God bless you. And I'm so sorry. But my buddy John was the CEO of a nonprofit called NPower. And he asked me on behalf of another client, hey, can you build websites in Joomla? And I was like, absolutely I can. And I did, is the other piece. I ended up delivering, but it cost me way more than I thought it was going to just go learn this little piece of software because I was so used to other applications. And I think that that's one of those, learning lessons of youth. So just make sure that you're dealing with somebody. And honestly, the fee schedule, I think, is going to reflect this. If you've got somebody super, super, young and aggressive and cheap, that's great. Go for it. Just know that they're probably, doing what I was doing. And what you have probably done, too, as a young entrepreneur. We all kind of went through that. So, yeah, anyway, that got real soapboxy. So sorry. I know I just annoyed a bunch of people. Please don't thumbs down me. I got a few thumbs down on a video a while ago, and I had no idea how much it was going to hurt. Yeah, I didn't realize how fragile my ego was. But anyway, thank you for watching. Thumbs up if this video was helpful. Comments if you have any questions or input. Subscribe if you want to see a video every day. And otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.